My world came crashing down when I discovered that my best friend had broken my trust in the most unimaginable way, by becoming pregnant with my husband's child during his infidelity. To make matters worse, my own mother tried to persuade me to relinquish full custody of my children to them. Let me take you back to how it all began, so you can understand the depth of this betrayal. I met my husband, Dev, when I was 21 and he was 23. Our connection was immediate and intense, and we dated for nearly 2 years before he got down on one knee and proposed. We've been married for 12 years now and have 2 beautiful children together. Early in our relationship, during our second year of dating, Dev introduced me to his mother, Morleary. From the very first meeting, I was eager to make a good impression. I wanted her to like me as much as I was beginning to love her son. But, unfortunately, the feeling wasn't mutual. You see, Morleary had been a widow for a long time. Her husband had passed away from a heart attack years prior, leaving her to raise Dev all by herself. This forged an incredibly close bond between them. Some might even say they were inseparable. Dev was, in many ways, a quintessential mama's boy, always seeking her approval in everything he did. He was nervous about introducing me to her, because her opinion meant the world to him. The main reason Morleary never warmed up to me was because of our vastly different backgrounds. I come from an upper-middle-class family, and my parents own multiple successful businesses. Growing up, I had a comfortable life, surrounded by opportunities and support. My parents covered my college expenses, and even bought me my first car to ensure I could get to work on time. However, they also instilled in me the importance of independence and carving out my own path in life. I worked hard to support myself and never asked my parents for financial help after graduating from college. In stark contrast, Dev's life had been more challenging. His father served in the military and was rarely around, and after his father's untimely death, Dev and Morleary became even more inseparable. Morleary struggled with alcoholism, which meant that from a very young age, Dev had to step up and take care of her. He started working at McDonald's part-time at a young age to earn extra money. When he was in college, he decided to drop out because he found no joy in pursuing his communications degree. He shared with me how unhappy and lost he felt during that period. Being a college dropout made it incredibly difficult for Dev to find stable employment. Determined not to give up, he began looking for jobs that didn't require a degree. He discovered freelance writing, and, much to his surprise, he did quite well for himself. His love for travel turned him into a digital nomad for a few years, before he met me and decided to settle down. Throughout all of this, his mother would ask him to send her a monthly allowance, which he willingly provided, even though it strained his finances significantly. As our relationship grew more serious, I felt it was time to tell Dev about my family's wealth and our generational assets. When I finally mustered the courage to reveal this part of my life, he didn't believe me at first. But after a quick Google search about my family, he was shocked. His reaction was not what I had hoped for. He became angry that I had kept this information from him for so long, accusing me of not trusting him. I tried to explain that in my past, people often wanted to be with me because of my family's wealth, which made me cautious about revealing it too soon. He seemed to understand, but every now and then, he would make snide comments about how I'd never have to try hard, or how I'd never know what it feels like to struggle. These remarks deeply hurt me because, despite the advantages my parents provided, I had worked tirelessly to establish myself in my field. I loved managing influencers and brands, and I funded my entire lifestyle without any financial assistance from my parents. Dev never seemed to grasp this, and in hindsight, this should have been my first red flag. When we decided to move in together, Dev was quick to suggest that he should move into my place since it was larger and more comfortable. I agreed, thinking it was a practical decision, and we began discussing how we'd split the rent and bills. To my surprise, Dev didn't like the idea of contributing financially. He argued that because he earned so little as a freelance writer, and because I came from old money, I should prove my love for him by covering his share of the bills and rent. I was taken aback by this and told him that while I didn't think it was fair, I could waive his portion of the rent, but he needed to pay his own bills. This suggestion didn't sit well with him. He raised his voice, accusing me of being selfish and cruel for not agreeing to his demands. We argued back and forth, and eventually, I caved in, hoping to keep the peace. I had to cut back on a lot of my expenses to pay for everything, but I was madly in love with him and wanted our relationship to work. Meanwhile, Dev continued sending his mother her monthly allowance and buying her extravagant gifts. Whenever I pointed out that he had money to spend on his mother, but not to contribute to our household, he'd become furious. He'd argue that his mother needed the money more than we did and that she was a single, aging parent who deserved his support. I'd feel guilty for even bringing it up, so I stopped mentioning it altogether. When Dev proposed to me, I was ecstatic. However, looking back, I realized that he put minimal effort into it. I had hoped that, for once, he wouldn't be stingy and would plan something special. Instead, he thought proposing to me in our backyard was a grand idea. To his credit, he did ask my parents for my hand in marriage like a true gentleman. My mother, who absolutely adored Dev, suggested he get help from my best friend, Kylie, to plan the proposal. He agreed, and together they came up with the brilliant idea of proposing to me in my own backyard, in front of all our family and friends. Let me tell you about Kylie. She has been my best friend since high school. Our families are incredibly close. Our mothers grew up together, which is how Kylie and I became inseparable. She's like the sister I never had, my soulmate in many ways. We've done everything together, from sleepovers to college road trips. Her family is like my second family, and vice versa. When Dev and I started dating, I, of course, introduced him to Kylie. They became good friends, and I was happy that the two most important people in my life got along so well. So, Kylie helped Dev not only plan the proposal, but also choose my engagement ring. To be honest, I was a bit taken aback by the surprise proposal in my backyard. I had always imagined something more intimate, or perhaps a romantic getaway. But seeing all my family gathered there to celebrate our happy day made me push aside any disappointment. My mother, Kylie, and Kylie's mother were the first to hug and congratulate me. Dev's mother, Morleary, also seemed happy for us, but she couldn't resist making a comment. She told me she had high expectations for me as her daughter-in-law, and hoped I would do everything in my power to keep her son happy. It was a happy night overall, filled with laughter and celebration. After we got married, nothing much changed in terms of our financial arrangements. I continued to pay for everything around the house, while Dev didn't spend a dime on me. I paid for our weekly dates, our yearly vacations, everything. Dev insisted he was saving money for our future, so I tried to be understanding. When I became pregnant with our first child, James, I was overjoyed but also anxious. It was a difficult pregnancy, and I was forced to quit my job to take care of my health. Dev didn't take the news well. He argued that if I stopped working, we wouldn't have enough money to support ourselves and the baby. His lack of support made me feel incredibly alone. I broke down and, for the first time, opened up to my parents about our situation. My mother, to my surprise, sympathized with Dev instead of me. She told me that many mothers continue to work during pregnancy, and that I should be strong and do the same. My father, on the other hand, was livid. He called Dev to give him a piece of his mind, telling him firmly that it was time to step up as a man and support his family. He warned Dev that if he continued to treat me this way, he wouldn't hesitate to advise me to file for divorce. Dev was visibly shaken by my father's words, especially when the topic of divorce was brought up. Although I didn't want to end my marriage, I realized that Dev was more concerned about losing access to my family's wealth than losing me. We had signed a prenuptial agreement at my father's insistence before our wedding, which meant that if we divorced, he would lose the house, his expensive car, and his comfortable lifestyle, all of which were under my name. For the first time, Dev stopped sending money to his mother and started contributing to our household expenses. I continued to pay the rent since I had substantial savings, but it was a relief to see him finally stepping up, even if his motivations were questionable. However, because he stopped sending money to Morleary, her resentment towards me grew. She blamed me for cutting off her financial support, accusing me of turning her son against her. When I gave birth to James, I was overwhelmed with happiness. Everyone came to the hospital to visit us and meet our new bundle of joy. Kylie stayed with me at the hospital for days until I recovered enough to go home. Dev, on the other hand, was busy with work and refused to help with the baby once we were back home. Being a new mother was incredibly nerve-wracking. My parents and Kylie's mother did their best to help out, but I felt the absence of my husband deeply. Morley would visit, but never to help. Instead, she'd make negative remarks about me, criticizing my postpartum weight, telling me I should attend to James the moment he started crying, and offering unsolicited advice that always seemed to undermine me. She never directed any of her criticisms at her son, who did absolutely nothing to help. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself sinking into a profound exhaustion and loneliness. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was experiencing postpartum depression, a condition many new mothers face, but rarely discuss openly. I tried to communicate my needs to Dev, hoping he'd share in the responsibilities of parenting, but he remained distant and unwilling to engage. He told me it was solely my responsibility as a mother, and that he didn't want to be involved, because he didn't know how to do anything. Managing household tasks, caring for a newborn, and coping with PPD was overwhelming. Dev's refusal to help only deepened my despair. He wouldn't change a single diaper or feed James, leaving me to shoulder all the responsibilities. Each day felt heavier than the last, and I felt like I was drowning in a sea of unmet needs and overwhelming expectations. Desperate for support, I opened up to my parents about my mental health struggles. My father was understanding and supportive, but my mother dismissed my concerns. She told me that PPD wasn't real, and that I needed to be strong for my baby. When I complained about Dev's lack of support, she scolded me, saying that as the mother, I should do a better job and not expect him to help. Her words cut deep, making me feel even more isolated. Amidst all this, Kylie was my rock. I confided in her about everything, the struggles in my marriage, my feelings of inadequacy, my depression. She sympathized, listened patiently, and even expressed anger at Dev's behavior. It felt comforting to know that, besides my father, I had someone in my corner during such a tough time. A year later, to my utter shock, I found out I was pregnant again. This was unplanned, and I definitely didn't want another child so soon, but I decided to trust in fate and embrace the unexpected blessing. When I told Dev, he was furious. He insisted that I get an abortion, arguing that we couldn't afford another baby. Our arguments escalated, and I decided it was time to return to work to ensure financial stability. I reached out to my old boss, who was more than happy to have me back as a freelancer until a permanent position opened up. Although my second pregnancy was also challenging, I was determined to make it work for the sake of my growing family. This time, when I started earning money, I decided not to deposit my entire paycheck into our joint savings account. I wanted to secure my future, and that of my children, so I kept 50% of my earnings and contributed the rest to our shared account. Once I started bringing in income, Dev became lazier by the day. He began complaining about how much he disliked his job and expressed a desire to quit. I tried to dissuade him, reminding him that without a college degree, he needed to hold on to a stable job that paid well. This only angered him, as he hated being reminded of his dropout status. He argued that since I had taken a break during my pregnancy, he deserved to take one too. I pointed out that my time off wasn't a vacation. I was carrying and caring for our child, but he refused to see reason. Despite our arguments, Dev quit his job, claiming we had enough savings and that since I was earning money, he could afford to rest. He spent his days playing video games, leaving me to juggle household chores, care for James, and work at my job. I started leaving James with my parents during the day since my mother didn't mind watching him, but it added to my exhaustion. Coming home after a long day to find Dev in the same spot on the couch, controller in hand, was infuriating. This went on for some time, and I grew increasingly frustrated with his lack of responsibility. I confronted him, urging him to look for a new job, but he didn't take kindly to my demands. Instead, he started spending his days at his friend Clinton's place, where they would play video games together. Clinton was a middle-aged divorcee whose wife had left him after cheating on him. This experience had left him bitter and misogynistic. He resented women and wasn't shy about expressing it. I didn't like Dev spending time with someone so negative, but he ignored my concerns. As Dev spent more time away from home, our arguments intensified. I felt like a single parent, carrying all the responsibilities while he shirked his duties. I held on for the sake of our children, hoping things would improve, but deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. When I gave birth to our second child, Dev was nowhere to be found. He claimed he was too busy and missed all my calls and messages when I went into labor. I never suspected him of anything nefarious, even though the red flags were glaringly obvious. Kylie was also unreachable when I called her for help. In the end, my parents took me to the hospital. Kylie visited the next day, apologizing profusely for not being there. She said she was caught up at work, and I believed her. Looking back, I realize how naive I was. After Na was born, I reached my breaking point. I told Dev that this was his last chance. If he didn't find a job and start contributing, I would pack up the kids and leave. Surprisingly, he agreed without much resistance, saying he'd start job hunting the next day. The following morning, while Dev was in the shower, I went to collect his dirty clothes for laundry. I heard his phone ping with a new message. Glancing over, I saw a message from a familiar number that made my blood run cold. It read, "When will you be telling her about us? I am pregnant and can't hold off the news any longer." I stood there, frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. I picked up the phone and opened the message thread, confirming my worst fears. When Dev emerged from the shower and saw me holding his phone, his face went pale. He tried to snatch it from me, but it was too late. Without thinking, I set down the laundry basket, walked up to him, and slapped him as hard as I could. He looked shocked, stammering that it was all a misunderstanding. I felt a surge of anger and betrayal unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I told him he was dead to me. In a flurry of emotion, I packed my bags and gathered the children's things. I drove straight to my parents' house, tears streaming down my face. They were shocked to see me standing at their doorstep with the kids and our luggage. The moment I saw them, I broke down completely, telling them everything between sobs. I've been crying almost non-stop for the past 2 days, unable to process how my life has unraveled. I informed my boss about the situation, and she graciously allowed me to take some time off. I'm at a loss for words, which is why I'm turning to share my story. My best friend of 20 years betrayed me by sleeping with my husband of 12 years. Not only that, but she's now pregnant with his child. This means that my marriage with Dev is essentially over. Both Dev and Kylie have been calling and texting me, pleading for a chance to explain, but I refuse to listen. Dev is begging me not to divorce him, saying I should think about our children. Am I wrong if I proceed with divorcing my cheating husband and take everything from him? Update 1 ***. Hey everyone, thank you so much for your overwhelming support and messages. I know it's been a month since my last update, but so much has happened, and I've been trying to navigate through this chaos. I'm back at work because, despite everything, life doesn't pause, and I need to keep moving forward. Work has been a welcome distraction, giving me a sense of normalcy amidst the turmoil. Many of you were right about Dev and Kylie. Their affair had been going on for a while. Kylie sent me a lengthy message, claiming she didn't mean for this to happen, but that she's fallen in love with Dev. She said that now that she's pregnant, she has to think about herself and was pushing Dev to tell me. Dev, on the other hand, knew he stood to lose his comfortable life if I left him. He admitted that he just wanted to sleep with Kylie and didn't expect her to get pregnant. Now he's stuck and doesn't know what to do. He's been begging me to forgive him, even suggesting that we convince Kylie to give up her baby so we can raise it together. His delusion and entitlement only fuel my anger. As for how their affair started, it turns out Dev had been confiding in Kylie behind my back. While he was supposedly out playing video games all day, he was actually opening up to her about how, mentally distressed, he was in our marriage, because I was pressuring him to get a job. Kylie, instead of encouraging him to be responsible, sympathized and slept with him. I can't comprehend her motivation, especially knowing how poorly he treated me. Perhaps she thought she could change him, or maybe she was jealous of our life. At this point, I don't care. I'm actually glad she decided to take on my trash, and now she can live with the consequences. I also suspect that the day I went into labor, they were together, which is why neither of them answered my calls. But that's not even the worst of it. When I first told my parents about Dev and Kylie, my mother refused to believe me. My father, however, was furious and called Dev, shouting at him for a good 15 minutes. Even as I cried, my mother tried to convince me that I might be mistaken, insisting there was no way Kylie would betray me like this. I called Kylie's mother to tell her everything, and unlike my own mother, she was livid. She didn't question me for a second and was completely on my side. She kept apologizing profusely, crying with me, and expressing her disgust at her daughter's actions. After talking with my father, I've decided to file for divorce. We already have a lawyer, and given our prenuptial agreement and Dev's infidelity, the proceedings should be straightforward. The tricky part might be the custody of our children, but I doubt Dev truly wants the responsibility, so I'm confident I'll get full custody. Throughout all this, my mother has been vehemently against my decision to divorce. When she realized I wouldn't change my mind, she switched tactics and started suggesting that I give full custody of the children to Dev. Her suggestion took me by surprise. At first, I thought she was joking, but she kept bringing it up over the past few days. Today, I finally lost my temper and confronted her, demanding to know why she would even suggest such a thing. She avoided answering and walked out of the room. Her behavior is making me incredibly suspicious. Why would my own mother urge me to give up custody of my children, knowing full well that Dev is an unfit parent? I feel I need to sit down with her and my father to get to the bottom of this. Update 2 ***. It's only been a few days since my last update, but I feel like I owe it to everyone who's been following my story to keep you informed. My inbox is flooded with messages and theories, and while this might be an interesting tale for some, for me, it's the harsh reality of my life. My lawyer has served Dev the divorce papers. He called me, crying like a man-child, begging for forgiveness. I couldn't help but laugh at his audacity, telling him to prepare to lose everything. James and Na are doing well despite the upheaval. Dev never spent much time with them, so they haven't really noticed his absence. It's been challenging to care for a baby while dealing with all of this, but I'm grateful for my father's support. Kylie's mother came to visit me since she lives in another city. She hasn't spoken to Kylie since finding out about the affair, and told me she plans to cut her off completely. She said she's embarrassed not just for my family, but also for hers. She knows what a deadbeat father Dev has been and is certain that Kylie will eventually reach out for financial assistance, which she is firmly against. Word of my divorce and Kylie's betrayal has spread among our friends and relatives. Everyone is on my side, and people have been sending harsh messages to both Kylie and Dev, expressing their disgust. This prompted a call from Morliery. She hadn't reached out once over the past month, not to offer comfort, or to apologize. When she finally called, it wasn't to check on me but to plead on Dev's behalf. She said he was suffering because everyone in their family had found out about his infidelity, and were upset with him. She had the nerve to suggest that, as a good daughter-in-law, I should return to him and retract the divorce. She tried to justify his actions by saying that men sometimes stray, but it's a woman's duty to bring them back. I couldn't listen to her nonsense any longer. I told her to shut up, something I'd never done before. She was shocked by my tone. I let her know exactly how I felt, that she should be ashamed of raising such a worthless son. I warned her that I planned to take everything from him in the divorce, and that if she ever contacted me again, I'd take legal action against her too. It felt liberating to finally stand up to her, to show her that I wasn't the timid daughter-in-law she'd always belittled. Dev is going to face the consequences of his actions, and no one, not even his overbearing mother, can protect him now. I also had that much-needed talk with my parents. My father and I confronted my mother about her strange behavior and insistence that I give up custody of my children. After much prodding, she finally confessed. After I told my parents about Dev and Kylie's affair, my mother, refusing to believe me, went to confront Kylie herself. They met up, and Kylie begged for forgiveness. My mother couldn't believe what she was hearing, but instead of standing by me, she felt sorry for Kylie. She promised to help her financially and tried to convince her not to break up my marriage, suggesting that Dev could support her child even if he stayed married to me. When Kylie resisted, my mother changed tactics. She started telling Kylie that if she was responsible for breaking up my marriage, she should also take responsibility for raising my children. She told Kylie that I suffered from postpartum depression and was an unfit mother. She suggested that Kylie and Dev should raise all the children together, as one family since they were siblings anyway. My mother even went as far as to say that if I gave up full custody, I'd be required to pay significant child support, which Kylie could use to care for her own child. I was speechless. My own mother had betrayed me in the worst possible way. She not only sided with the woman who destroyed my marriage, but also tried to convince her to take my children away from me. She believed that because of my PPD, I was incapable of being a good mother, ignoring the fact that my depression was a direct result of Dev's neglect and mistreatment. My father was just as shocked and disgusted. He asked my mother to leave the house immediately, telling her their marriage was over. She pleaded and cried, but he stood firm. I don't remember much after that, it's all a blur. My mother left to stay with her sister. I feel utterly betrayed. In the span of a few months, I've lost my husband, my best friend, and now, essentially, my mother. It feels like I can't trust anyone anymore. Update 3 ***. It's been 6 long months since my last update. First, I want to thank everyone who reached out to me during this incredibly difficult time. Your messages and comments have been a lifeline, reminding me that I'm not alone. I'm relieved to share that my divorce was finalized last month. My father has been my rock, supporting me every step of the way. Thanks to our prenuptial agreement and Dev's infidelity, he walked away with nothing. During the custody battle, he initially fought for full custody, then for joint custody, but my lawyer presented a strong case. We highlighted his lack of involvement, his unemployment, his mother's alcoholism, and his affair resulting in another child. The court granted me full custody of James and Na, and Dev was ordered to pay monthly child support. Watching his face as the judge read the verdict was a moment of vindication. I glanced back to see Morley glaring at me, but I felt nothing but satisfaction. I had taken back control of my life. As for my mother, she has been trying desperately to reconcile. My father has refused to forgive her easily, insisting that she attend therapy to address her deeply ingrained misogyny and to understand the gravity of her betrayal. She's been staying with her sister and has been going to therapy regularly. While I hope she finds clarity and changes for the better, I'm not ready to let her back into my life just yet. I remain in contact with Kylie's mother, who has been nothing but supportive. True to her word, she has cut off all ties with Kylie and even removed her from her will, adding me instead. It seems that karma is catching up with Kylie. I've heard that Dev doesn't want to marry her, or have anything to do with her child. Just as I suspected, he's shirking responsibility yet again. Morley is furious with him for losing his family, and now refusing to step up for his new child. As for me, I'm doing much better. I've been focusing on my children and rebuilding our lives. It's not easy being a single mother, but every day I feel stronger and more capable. I've started therapy to work through the trauma and to ensure I'm the best mother I can be for James and Na. I won't say this journey has been easy, but I have no regrets. I'm grateful for the lessons learned. Had I not gone through this ordeal, I might still be stuck in a loveless marriage, burdened by a partner who didn't value me. I believe everything happens for a reason, and perhaps this was the push I needed to find true happiness. Thank you all for being there for me. Your support has meant the world, and I hope my story can serve as a reminder that even in the darkest times, there is a path forward.